Hey everyone, Charlie here. So, today I really wanted to go back to a nostalgic format and do something that I feel like would be fitting for my channel. So I decided I would read out Creepypasta. Back in the days, I used to terrify the shit out of myself by reading Creepypastas. The first Creepypasta I ever read, in fact, was actually Teddy. And you better believe that it did cause me to have nightmares. So, inspired by my childhood nightmares, and also some more ordinary gamers in Hey Peer, and the positive reception I got for reading Sonic Has Passed, Part 1, here is Sonic the Hedgehog 3, Hack.
Before I tell you the story, let me clarify a few things. My friend and I are fans of Sonic the Hedgehog. Well, big enough to know a little more about the franchise than some of the more core fans, but not enough to own every single Sonic the Hedgehog related item and know every single thing about it. For the most part, my friend and I have read the comics, have seen some of the shows, and occasionally looked up info on our favorite characters on several wikias on the web. My friend, however, grew up in one of those super strict religious households that wouldn't let him or any of his siblings play video games at all. My friend had to negotiate for hours just to look up a few wikia articles on the computer, or watch a few of the shows on TV. Earthly things are the work of the devil himself, they said, cursing their own cell phones. But he could absolutely not play any of the games. Not at his house anyway, rather not while his parents were in his immediate space. The only time he got to experience the games was whenever he came over to my house after school, or sometimes on the weekends when he wasn't being hauled to church, or whatever function his parents were a part of. However, we never fully finished any of the games we played, Sonic related or otherwise. Said friend got accepted to college in Europe some months ago, thanks to some year-long insomnia and induced socialization killing studying. And he was, and I quote, feeling very nostalgic. He called me up one day as I was finishing up some computer games, and he was packing his stuff and prepping for his new adventures in Europe. This very talkative and easily excited friend talked my ear off and bugged me to death about getting together to play a certain Sonic game from our youth. His pestering and purposely calculated bushbeating eventually made me cave, and we finally arranged a playdate and decided on our game of choice. And the choice we agreed on was Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles. My friend saw me play this game once a long time ago, but he only saw mere seconds of it before having to go home. I remember his uncontrollable excitement as I zoomed through the stages of Hypersonic, blasting enemies to a poof with little or no effort. Thanks to the glowing and shining double image sprite, my friend was dying to play it and complete it since the very moment he laid eyes on it. He wanted to do so with me before he went away for some 4+ years. I remember sighing to myself after we ended the call. I wouldn't have been bothered by any other Sonic game, but the thing is, I played this game so many times as a child that just hearing its name drove me into a type of nostalgic insanity. Like singing your favorite song over and over until you dread hearing its melodic patterns ever again. I knew this game's distinctive and long story. I knew this game's once cool tiny secrets. I got all the game's ending, and well, long story short, I knew this game inside and out. The thought of playing it again for the sake of nostalgia seemed like an absolute chore to me. But I agreed to it, and I would have to stick it through to the end for the sake of my friend. Life, nature, and irony struck after the day of the phone call. The week before the playdate was absolutely chaotic. For whatever reason, life threw random, unnecessary, and just plain shit at me every chance it could find. For example, a raven cracked my windshield and proceeded to poop all over it. I woke up early and cranky on the day of our playdate, and realized that I no longer had my Sonic and Knuckles and Sonic 3 cartridges required to play Sonic 3 and Knuckles. About several months ago, after what I hoped to be my last and final playthrough of the game, my younger brothers decided it would be a great idea to fuck with their big sister and give both copies a bath. This left me with nothing but the accurate memories of its completion, and now a very dusty interlocking cartridge that made Sonic 3 and Knuckles possible for the Sega Genesis. I all but flew out of my bed, hurried into my Raven-phobic car, and drove thrift store to thrift store to find Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic and Knuckles. It took half the day to find copies of the game. Both were in 2 different stores in 2 different and very distant parts of town. The prices for the games varied. Sonic and Knuckles was $8 with minor scratches, and the other that was slightly scratched got handled down to $10, and a coupon for a free copy from the shop I genuinely haunted before and after work. Both copies, of course, were used, and both the guys who sold it to me said that the copies looked and worked fine. As skeptical as I was at their promises, I didn't really have time to check if they were saying the truth. I ran back to my car and rushed back to my apartment as soon as I had the keys in the ignition. In retrospect, that was the dumbest thing I could have done. My friend arrived not seconds after I walked back into my apartment. He made this apparent by knocking on my door and ringing my doorbell in a very rapid, continuous, and annoying fashion. He was so excited about playing this game that he made kids at Disneyland look hopelessly bored, if not helplessly lethargic. He bursted through the door like a strong blizzard wind, and while bouncing endlessly, tugged me into my living room, his mouth yammering questions at the speed of light. I sighed and prepared for the evening by quickly dusting off my Trooper of a Sega Genesis, interlocking Sonic and Knuckles, and Sonic 3 to get Sonic 3 and Knuckles, hooking up the system to the TV, and then finally turning on the game. The Sega logo and voice chorus popped up, followed by a 3D Sonic that had spun himself into the title screen. The little blue hedgehog shook its finger back and forth and winked while giving us his signature half-smile, while Tails flew in the background in the tornado over the blue seas, blue skies, and blue mountains. My friend cooed as we came to the data select after the title screen and picked new file, with both Sonic and Tails striking a pose beneath a new box. I pick up the second controller, explaining to my friend how I can be Tails, and then I instructed him to begin the game. As the intro cutscene began, my eyes grew wide with irritation and disbelief. This was not the game I played repeatedly as a child. Tails and the tornado plane were completely absent. Sonic was already in his golden super form and flying on the water by himself. The color scheme of the sky, clouds, and water were greenish instead of their correct rich blue color. The music was also different. Not slow, not fast, but different, like a chiptune incorporated remix. The intro also went much quicker than the original did, as if someone fast-forwarded to the scene with Knuckles. Knuckles, instead of jumping for the ground and knocking Sonic backward, only stood still and faced the direction in which Sonic came. Sonic's animation did as it should have when he bumped into Knuckles, flying backward and blinking before landing on the ground. Sonic, however, dropped no emeralds upon landing. Knuckles, after we finally left the scene, and the gameplay began with Angel Island Zone, Act 1, displayed in its mega annoying font. I felt panic and anger crash through me like a hurricane. One or both of the games I purchased was hacked. Gently used my ass. I was just about to stand from the floor and get my cell phone before my very excited friend boomed in excitement. I stopped myself and remembered that my friend had never had the joy of experiencing this game, and would only have the chance that afternoon. Even if the game was hacked, this friend's excitement and ignorance kept me from ruining this precious time we had together. I sighed, put down my cell phone, and went back into the living room, biting back my seething rage. When I looked back at the screen, I saw Sonic running through the zone by himself. No Tails. I knew for a fact that my friend did not reset the game and choose a Sonic-only story. I also know for a fact that we were going for the true ending, so we needed Tails. Yet, despite us picking this option, he was nowhere to be found on the screen. I felt my rage coming back before silencing it once again. Besides this not so tiny factor, and the remix music and greenish color scheme, the game played like a normal one-player game. I sighed quietly and then guided my friend to the first ring under the cliff in the first part of the level. My friend got Sonic to spin dash into the rocks and jump into the magic ring. This is where it got weird. The secret world was supposed to have a top-down view of Tails behind Sonic on top of a checkerboard, spherical 3D plane with even tinier blue and red spears lining the plane. The mission in these secret stages is to collect all blue spears in order to get the Chaos Emeralds. Instead, we were taken to the Super Emerald Shrine. The shrine was only supposed to appear after you collected the first set of Chaos Emeralds, which makes sense, I guess. Sonic still had the first set of emeralds you were supposed to collect. Knuckles stared at Sonic as he did before, but Tails was facing away from Sonic and looking up at empty platforms. Knuckles then turned to Tails for a few seconds before Tails decided to turn to face Knuckles in return. After a beat, Knuckles nodded, and then turned back to Sonic. Tails, after another beat, went to Sonic, but instead of standing close to Sonic, Tails had his back to Sonic and stood away from him at a distance. The cutscene ended, flashed white, then transitioned to a special stage with the spears. We completed the stage, obtained one of the Super Emeralds, and came back to Angel Island Zone. I eternally winced, not out of fear, but out of confusion and slight irritation. Tails and Sonic were now together throughout the run, but Tails was still cold towards Sonic. Tails never stood in close tandem with Sonic, and he would always face away from Sonic. Even when I tried to correct his position, Tails would just move himself back at a distance and keep his back turned to the blue hedgehog instead of facing him. An unsettling feeling poked at my stomach as I guided my friend throughout the level. It wasn't long before we came to a sick and secret ring location and jumped in. Again, we were taken to the shrine of the Super and Master Emerald where Knuckles stood waiting again. After a few seconds, Knuckles faced away from Sonic and Tails before turning to the right of the screen. Seconds later, another sprite appeared from that of the corner of the screen. A female with blonde hair, dark brown fur, and blue boots. It took me a moment to realize that this was Princess Sally Acorn. I blinked a few times and looked again to make sure I wasn't seeing things. Sally didn't exist outside of the Archie comic book universe, and she hasn't been blonde since the SU-0 of the Sonic the Hedgehog series. Regardless, she was inside the game and looked like she belonged there. As if the original makers of the game designed her sprite for the purpose of being part of the game's story. And I mean everything, from the hair all the way down to the knee-pipe blue boots and her big blue eyes. The very convincing Sally sprite then came up to Knuckles and stood very close to him. Sonic stepped forward, but Sally turned away. Sonic tried to run forward, but Knuckles blew him back with a punching animation. Tails did absolutely nothing for his bro, but watch as Sonic received Knuckles' blows. The scene ended again and put us back at the intended special stage. We finished it and got the emerald, and continued on to Angel Island. Sally is supposed to be Sonic's love interest in the Archie comic books, so why is he with Knuckles? Is this supposed to be canon to the comics? But Sally didn't have this color scheme when she met Knuckles in stories. My friend and I looked at each other as I felt a chill race down my spine. At this point, we were both wondering what the hell was going on. I wanted to point to our hanging out and convince him to stake off the occurrence. We ran through the level and eventually came upon another special ring and jumped into another special stage. We expected another weird cutscene with Sally and Knuckles, but instead it played normally, albeit with remixed music and green hints around it. The shrine was empty, and prompted us to pick up a Super Emerald to obtain, and send us to the special stages. We cleared the stage and the corresponding Super Emerald returned to its place on the platform. We continued through the zone till we got to the true game's second cutscene. In this scene, one of Robotnik, or Eggman's bots, set the forest on fire. However, it was instead the Sally sprite and Eggman's ship that comes at the end of the level. Just as fire from the ship launched itself up in order to burn the island, a black screen flashed with the words, "Are you satisfied?" in white text. The mists in the black screen disappeared and led us back to the cutscene. The flames that enveloped the screen burned a pixelated, sticky green color and slowed to an almost rhythmic, dancing crawl before it froze. Likewise, the music halted to one long monotone note for what felt like hours. The combination of colors and the unrelenting notes had a feeling of sickness in my head and stomach that lasted as long as the sound buzzed throughout the apartment. The green flame slowly grew yellow in the center and continued to rouse my stomach until it gagged. "Hey, is this supposed to happen?" my friend asked, his restless excitement now replaced with concerning confusion. Before I could answer him, the game unfroze itself and continued with the cutscene currently in play. The flames poured down the screen and revealed Angel Island under a pulsating green and yellow fire. A still distant Tails and a standard disinterest Sonic stood waiting for us to continue the pursuit. My friend took the controller and continued, without waiting for my reply. He went straight ahead, asking me where the next special ring is. I debated the options in my head. Stop the game and stop any potential surprises from coming up, or keep this going and give in to the notorious plight of curiosity. It was loyalty that won out over every raging emotion within me instead of clear logic. We continued our special ring pursuit in impatient silence. I could feel the hair rising from my skin with each moment that we progressed further and further into the stage. The green and yellow flames danced and waved in a way that made my head ache in the most worst of ways. My friend sat with great stillness and absolute reticence as he navigated the stage and came upon the last ring we needed to become hypersonic. With little to no hesitation, he jumped into the oversized ring and the special stage commenced. Under a black screen popped up white writing. Was it worth it? Was she worth it? The screen flashed back to the special stage. We retrieved several blue orbs and tried to ignore the first message as the second one overtook the screen with another sudden flash. In the walls, under the floors. We got the last orbs and the stage faded to a dark green and yellowish tone. The Super Emerald came towards us and grew very large, to the point where it enveloped the entire screen, leaving just a running Sonic and Tails and large green emerald graphic. The screen cut to black before going to the score screen. The usual white screen containing the scores and the emeralds was now green, and the words that were supposed to say, "Now Sonic can become hypersonic," now said, "The mighty will fall." The screen cut to black, then cut back to the shrine. The emeralds all appeared and glowed on their corresponding platforms. Below the emeralds was the blonde Sally sprite and a fallen Knuckles. Sonic, without any hesitation, spin dashed right into Tails, and threw him out to the other side of the shrine. Sally backed up as Sonic prepared to spin dash right into her, before Knuckles got up and deflected him. Knuckles went to punch Sonic, but the screen cut to black again. The screen cut back to the very beginning to Act 1 on Angel Island. What the hell is this? How did we get back to the beginning? I felt sick. The green and yellow colors were even heavier than before. My stomach churned. I just wanted to move on to the next zone as quickly as possible. Just go hypersonic so we can move on to Act 2, I said, cradling my head in my hands. I told him what buttons to press, then the chiptune remix changed to the standard music I heard in the title screen, as Sonic turned blue to a flashing rainbow color. I sighed in relief and watched as the double-image hypersonic flew through the stage with absolute ease. But that elated feeling of relief changed after a mere seconds. Sally's image appeared in front of Sonic like a ghost, and with a sudden temper of sprite, Sonic lost his multicolored shine and flew backward. His rings scattered across the stage like golden fireworks. The ring count on the upper left corner of the screen became 0, and the game's frame rate once again slowed down to a crawl. The screen cut to black again just before Sonic touched the ground. You can't escape. The levels were set once again and we were back at the beginning. The level was now nothing but undiluting, sickly green and yellow tones. The enemies were still. There was no music. Nothing but absolute silence. But honestly, I would rather have that. I would rather it remain like this for the rest of the game. Sonic stood, still motionless, now looking at the ground below him. Under him was not grass and dirt textures, but Sally. Never-ending rows of sleeping blonde Sallys laying in the ground and standing in the walls of the caves. Every time Sonic took a step, they stretched and bent their bodies and limbs as if in incredible agony. Each time Sonic jumped, they rolled and pulsed like the quivering sky. All their sleeping heads faced the blue Hedgehog. All the sprites tracked his every move and every action. The black screen made another appearance and taunted us. Here lies Princess Sally Anderson. Her royal majesty now sleeps in the most unconventional of graves. What the hell? My friend exclaimed, his hands now limp and shaking. Is this some type of joke? Who the hell is Sally Anderson? What the hell is going on? I shook my head and he looked at me, asking me the same question, even going as far to shake me. I threw his arms off me and crawled towards the Genesis. Wait! He shouted. What are you doing? I looked at him, my heart pounding, my hands shaking in a cold sweat. What the hell do you think I'm doing? I'm turning off this shit before it gets worse. He put his controller down and took my hands, practically pulling me away from the system. He looked at the screen, then the Genesis, then back to me and shook his head, as if I didn't understand him. He did so again, this time mouthing with an accompanying no. My eyes grew wide. You really want to go with this? I know this sounds crazy, but I really want to see where this goes. He looked back at the screen. This is our last night together. Even if this is some messed up shit, I really want to see how this thing ends. I just looked at him. In my mind, I questioned if loyalty was really worth all this. The feeling in the back of my head told me to stop. The sickness in the pit of my stomach was sick of negotiating and wanted some type of relief from this madness. In the end, though, it didn't matter. My friend picked up the controller once again and manipulated the lone Sonic to continue onward. The restless Sallys made the stage move in ways it was never intended to. After a while, it seems as they were reaching for him. The Sallys went Sonic. And it was not because he was Mr. Love. My skin prickled in agony. I fought back the bile that was rising to my mouth. This sickening curiosity, this wanting to see how the story ends was eating at my health. We came to what should have been the end of the stage. In fear and curiosity, my friend and I watched as we came upon Knuckles and Tails and other character sprites that shouldn't have been in the game. The Chaotix, Amy Rose, Cream and Cheese, all stood staring at the ground. When my friend had control again, he pushed Sonic forward. All the characters turned to Sonic. My friend pushed Sonic even further, passing the sprites in a slow, walking fashion. Each and every sprite followed Sonic. After the last sprite was passed, the black screen came again. She was mine, he said. The screen went away and Sonic was alone again. The sky stood still and the Sallys were stagnant. Sonic was pushed down the long path. The blue Hedgehog began to gain speed and run down the path, continuing very quickly to nowhere. He ran for seconds, then minutes, then those minutes turned into what felt like hours. Then Sonic was blown back again. As soon as he fell to the ground, the Sallys awoke again, and took him by his feet. The ghost Sally sprite stood before Sonic, just standing and staring. The Sallys from the ground pulled Sonic into the ground. Sonic's sprite began to make an unfamiliar drowning animation. The ghost, only standing Sally, walked up to Sonic. As soon as he touched him, the screen cut to black again. And the walls. The shrine appeared again. Sonic did a spin dash. Sally was in his path trying to escape him. Under the floors. He dashed through Sally and she flew backward like Tails. And the walls. Sonic attacked Sally again. Under the floors. She fell to the floor. And the walls. so I dragged her away with an unfamiliar and strange animation. Under the floors. The sallies from the ground finally got Sonic's sprite completely under the ground. Another unfamiliar animation of him dying over and over again played until the screen froze. This time we waited and watched the screen. After a long beat of time, I sighed with relief and turned the system off. Epilogue. It's been a whole month since that whole ordeal happened. As soon as we turned off the game, I went to puke, took an Advil, and then went onto a gaming forum I'm a part of. My friend and I agreed that we would never play this game until we're sure we have the right copies of the game. We also agreed that we should post up a basic and not so detailed version of our experience on the gaming forum that we were a part of as a warning to nostalgia lovers like ourselves. And no, we didn't include the creepy parts. We wanted the article to seem serious and not like some weird story. Recently, however, I got a reply from that forum. It was from one of those users with those obnoxious usernames that are mixed with capital and lowercase letters and random numbers that were supposed to form a certain type of word. I opened up the forum post and read the reply with a neutral feeling, if that's even possible. It was a standard reply, something like, "Wow, that sounds really weird," or whatever. The same user later sent me a friend request. I was suspicious at first. I checked his profile to find out he was a Sonic fan too, and actually made ROMs and certain hacked ROMs. I decided it would be nice to have another Sonic fan as a friend, since my friend was already overseas and suffering from his crappy internet connection. I added the annoying username to my friends, and they instantly started to private message me. The long short of the message was that the user told me that my experience was a little strange, if not coincidental, because they once had the same cartridges that they and their friends hacked a long time ago. For the sake of the conversation, I prompted the user to tell me more about the story of the cartridges. The user went on to tell me that the project was actually going to be some type of interactive fanfiction that included some of the Archie Sonic characters. The story was that Sonic was framed, and everyone would band together with Knuckles in order to keep the Master Emerald out of the hands of Eggman while Sonic tried to clear his name. For whatever reason, I responded and told this user the full details of the contents of the cartridge I ended up buying. And then I assured them that this, although oddly similar, was definitely not their cartridges. Weirdly enough, the user abruptly stopped everything after I told them the story. After a few moments of waiting, I figured they must have taken too long, and the user, wherever they may be in the world, had other things to do while they were waiting. It wasn't until another week went past I saw the user's reply. The user invited me to a chat room to talk. I logged into the room and waited. There were no other users available except the user and me. I typed in a few lines and waited. I waited longer and longer, and even longer until minutes turned into an hour, and my very cold toes began to retaliate via numbness. When I didn't get a reply, I began typing up a message that said I was about to leave, until I received a very, very scary reply. "You have my cartridges. You have my cartridges and I want them back. Give me your address so I can pick them up." The hairs on my back stood erect, and a screaming voice in the back of my mind told me to leave the chat room at once, and block the user as fast as I possibly could. I started to shake, not from cold, but fear. I struggled to find my mouse on my desk with out-of-control fingers. The user replied again. "You weren't meant to see what you saw. My friend ended up taking those cartridges after we fell out and stopped the project. They must have hacked them behind my back before returning them. They weren't meant to be sold at stores. I sold the wrong copies. Give me your address so I can swap copies. I have the ones that aren't corrupt. I'll give them to you for free." Replies were rapid, almost as if the person typing the messages were in a state of rising panic. They got progressively more aggressive with each reply. "Hello? Hello? Are you there? Hurry up and give me your address. Give it to me! Give me your fucking address!" I was frozen. I opened up a new tab and typed Sally Anderson into the search bar. I felt the color drain from every part of my body when I saw the results. In horror, I clicked the first result and read the article over and over until each sentence burned into my mind. Sally Anderson is a registered missing person in the local papers. She hasn't been found for years. The chat messages continued to ping loudly from my other tab. My body shook. My vision began to blur from welling tears. I went back to the chat room and saw a wall of replies by the user, frantically giving me the same demand as before. "I'm sorry for yelling. Seriously though, give me your address. I can explain everything. Just give me your address now. Give me your address. Where do you live? Tell me where you fucking live!" I felt cold sweat trickle down my neck as I typed in my reply. By this point, my whole body was filled from nerve to nerve with pure, unadulterated fear. I struggled to form words, but the message manifested. Who is Sally Anderson? The user went silent again. The anticipation built up inside me and left me a jittering, nervous wreck. I typed the question again, and again, and again, and again, until it was my replies that painted the chat room walls. I stopped when my fingers became numb, and I couldn't correctly spell any more words. I waited in silence, rocking back and forth for comfort in vain, as the sun set and made my apartment dark and absolutely unbearable. After a while, my computer screen lit the cold darkness that surrounded me. I could not leave my chair. I could not leave my place. I watched and waited for the user to give me an answer. The ping of the chat room echoed in my mind. I looked at the bottom, at the user's very short, simple response. Sally Anderson is mine. I took my mouse and struggled back out of the chat to get back to my page, unfriend and block the user to the point where they couldn't even post replies on any of my forum posts. I struggled to power down my computer only to fall out of my chair and knock my mug down with me. I reached my hand behind one of the legs on my desk and struggled for what felt like years to unplug my machine. I struggled to my feet, turned on all the lights, and paced for a long time between the kitchen and the living room, repeating the phrase in my mind that had haunted my thoughts since the moment I saw it. This phrase echoed in my mind throughout the late night. It echoed into the early morning and into the afternoon. I couldn't sleep. I can't sleep. So, today, after another week of fucking insomnia-induced paranoia, I decided to plug in my computer back in and try to contact my friend in Europe. I checked my inbox to see many emails of junk and unimportant variety. Except for one. The sender was unnamed, and the email was titled with the words, "Found you." I studied it for several minutes before finally opening it. I read the message slowly and out loud. I found you. I know you live in those mediocre fucking apartments off of Anderson Street. I know you work at that fucking sad excuse of a printing shop off 3rd Street in May. I know you go to Pauline's Coffee at 6 a.m. before you go to work and at 2 p.m. after you get off. I know you drink cappuccinos with heavy liquid creamer and extra sugar with 3 sticks of cinnamon. I know the car you drive is a blue 2000 Honda Civic with a large crack in the windshield. I know your plate number is AUK278 and that you have a little Tails bobblehead on the dashboard. I know you graduated from Thompson High School in 2011. I know where you go, when you go, what you do, and when you do it. And no matter where you run, no matter where you hide, I will be right there, right around the corner. And then you will join her. You'll join her, and then you'll be mine too. My already exhausted body goes numb. My tired yet wired mind whirs and crackles like a computer before me. I feel the pins prickle at my body. I feel the sickness poke at the pit of my stomach. Once more, as I remember Sally's lying, moving, pulsing, and waving body under the ground of Angel Island Zone. I lock the door, grab a kitchen knife, call the police, and after the call is finished, I go into my bedroom and shut the door. I sit on the floor in the front of my bed where 2 games that changed my life in all the wrong ways lying in a cold, quiet sleep. They lay sleeping as Sally does, in the walls, under the floors.
So, that was Sonic the Hedgehog 3 Hack. The story was written by BlueCheese001 and submitted on the Some Ordinary Gamers wiki. Honestly, it's a pretty decent Sonic creepypasta. I didn't like the ending that much though, because it's too happy-esque. For context of the story of that creepypasta, at one point the creator of Happy Happy goes after the author. I feel like that part kind of ruins the story a bit, in my opinion. Sonic 3 Hack though is a pretty memorable creepypasta in my opinion, which is really helped by the image mockups created by UrkelBot666. So yeah, on my rating, I give it an 8.5 out of 10.